Hey y'all, it's Kayla and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Now, today I'm doing something a little different. I am doing a drawing challenge that's being hosted by Sheena of She Meets City through her Patreon community. She's challenging all of us to redraw one of the pieces that we did in the past. So I'm redrawing something that I originally drew in September of 2020 in the current style that I work in now. I'm so excited about this, and in this video I'm sharing my rough sketch process and my line art process for my redraw. I also thought that I'd take this opportunity to host a little Q&A so that you guys can get to know me a little better. So my friends over on Instagram have sent the best questions about everything from how I price my commissions, what my workflow is, and my favorite brushes, who my art inspirations are, and how I track expenses for my small business. I'm super excited to dig into these things, but first, let me introduce myself really quickly. You know, my name is Kayla. I go by Kayla Creative online, and I love helping other creatives just like me learn how they can make digital art and an income right from their iPads. If that sounds cool to you, be sure to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications so that you'll know the next time I post a video like this one. Okay, first question. My friend Celestine Art World over on Instagram asked me, did you think a lot about using Procreate? And did you think a lot about drawing on an iPad? This is a good question. The answer to this is no, not really. I didn't consider many other or really any other drawing software or hardware outside of the iPad and Procreate. So at the very beginning of my art journey, before I even had an iPad, I was on YouTube watching people drawing digitally and watching tutorials and falling in love with the possibilities of digital art. Now, it may just have been from luck or happenstance, but the only tutorials that YouTube showed me were ones where people were drawing on an iPad using Procreate. So when it came time for me to purchase the hardware and software I needed to start my digital art journey, I didn't consider any other options outside of an iPad and Procreate. I didn't even really know about any other options. So no, it wasn't a long decision of deciding between which drawing software and hardware to use. It was a quick Amazon Prime purchase of an iPad and then hopped into the App Store and downloaded Procreate as soon as it arrived to my front door. Thank you for sending a question in, Celestine. Okay, next question is from Malika Mota. Malika asks, at what age did you start drawing? I cannot remember a time when I wasn't drawing. So even though I just got my iPad recently, which was last summer, at the time that you're watching this video is about a year since I purchased my iPad. That doesn't mean that that was my first time ever drawing. I used to trace my coloring book pages when I was really, really young. And then after tracing coloring book pages, I started to draw my Barbies in different situations to kind of bring my Barbies more to life, I guess you would say. So my Barbies were kind of like my references. So I used to do that when I was really young. I used to draw comic strips. And then when I got a little bit older in high school, I moved into acrylic painting, but I always would sketch the outline for my paintings on the canvas before I painted them. So drawing was still involved with that. And then I went to college and studied communication. So that is the point where art started to get a little bit further away from me. I always used to doodle in the corners of my college notes and in my notebooks and on napkins at restaurants and things like that, or in my journals and diaries, but I didn't set aside as much time for art as I used to when I was younger, starting in college and then definitely going into getting a job after college and growing a career after college. Art slowly got more and more into the background, and again just did little doodles in the corners of papers and things like that. So when I found the digital art tutorials on YouTube that I was talking about a little while ago, it really opened back up this new world of art for me and showed me a way that I could have art more accessible to me at my fingertips using technology if I just purchased an iPad. So that was one of the major reasons why I decided to go ahead and purchase the iPad, is because I really missed those times when I was younger, when I used to draw all the time. Again, tracing coloring pages, drawing my Barbie dolls, drawing little comic strips just for myself. I used to have so much fun, and I missed that. And so I'm really glad that I bought my iPad so that I could get back into drawing. So I'm sorry I don't have a specific age to give you, Malika, but it was really, really young when I started. Thank you so much for sending a question. Okay, so Zay Draws asks, who are your inspirations? And I have so many. I won't be able to remember them all or even fit them all in this video, but a couple of folks that I do want to shout out and that I encourage you to follow if you're not following already. Sarah Faber. She is definitely one of the first artists that I discovered with a style that I really connected with. She's amazing. She actually relaunched her YouTube channel very recently, and I've been a patron of hers for a long while. She's just super, super talented. So if you don't know Sarah, definitely check her out. There's Likelihood Art, who is extremely talented, who has the most beautiful painterly but also very current modern style, and she paints a lot of women and also men of color, and I just love the silky smooth look of her art. Definitely check her out. She's got a wonderful YouTube channel and does lots of draw with me videos where you get to look at her process. Then there's Sonia Stegman. Huge fan of hers. I love the way that she interprets references. She does a lot of magical and whimsical drawings, and she encourages her audience to inspire her drawings and be a part of her creative process. She also goes live almost weekly on her Instagram page, so definitely check Sonia out. There's She Meets City. Sheena is a gem. She is so much fun to follow. She's also an artist that does a lot of lives on Instagram that really cultivates her community. I'm a patron of hers on Patreon, and she just shares such excellent, great content. Sheena's also a master of color palettes, so I've learned a lot about choosing colors very mindfully from Sheena. Definitely follow her if you're not already. I love Erica the Goober. I think she's so talented. She does streaming on Twitch, I believe, more so than on Instagram, but she's definitely one of my favorites, and she's always doing fun challenges over on her page. Christina Lorray, who is the creator of the Raw Sushi account. She's just adorable. I love the characters that she draws. They're very fun characters, and she's a woman of faith that talks a lot about her relationship with God. I adore that about her. I'm also a patron of hers on Patreon. She has excellent content over there. She also has a YouTube channel, so check her out. There's Mrs. Butterdee, who I think is just the line art queen. If you love watching soothing and perfect line art, head over to her Instagram page. She does short reels and short videos showing just the amazing process of her line art. And then there's Pipa's Art, who is an extreme talent. She has a big YouTube channel that you can check out over here. She has a shop. She has an Instagram page. She's been running her art accounts online for years and years now, and she's just been growing consistently. She has a really beautiful perspective, a really pronounced style all her own, and I really don't think there's anything Pipa can't draw. So definitely check her out. I'll link to all of these artists in the description. Thank you for your question, Zay. Okay, so Radu K Art asks, how do I price commissions? This is a great question. If you have hung out around my channel before, you know I love talking about how you can make money from art. And I especially love commissions because by selling digital art commissions, that was the first time I ever made money from my art online. So again, I love this topic. Now, I have a couple of resources for you before I get started with answering this question that will go into a little bit more detail than I can go into in this video. I have a video that I already recorded here on my channel called How to Sell Digital Art Commissions Online. It gives a step-by-step guide for beginner artists on how to start selling commissions, and I think it'll answer some of the questions that you might have around the entire commission process. I'll link to that in the description. I also have another video called How to Price Your Art, where I give 2 ways that beginner artists can price their art really simply to start with, including pricing their commissions. I'll link that in the description. And then the third thing that I have is a course, a masterclass called The Commission Key, where I go through every single step that beginner artists can take to turn their art accounts into a little client magnet so that they can start getting found and paid by commission clients online. I talk about pricing in that masterclass, so I'm going to link that in the description below as well. So there are 2 different techniques that I would suggest to anybody who's just getting started with selling digital art commissions online, who are wondering how they should price their commission work. The first one I call market rate technique. So you would just take a pen and paper, go online, and find 3 to 5 different artists who are publicly sharing their commission rates. Take notes of what they are pricing themselves at, and then price yourself somewhere in line with those 3 to 5 artists in the upper range of their range, okay? Y'all know I am anti-starving artist, so I'm always going to encourage you all to price yourself in the upper range. Now, when you're looking at your market rate research, you want to make sure that you're researching artists that are creating work similar to the work that you plan to create. In other words, if you are a caricature artist creating cartoon style work, you want to make sure that you are researching artists that are also creating cartoon style work. Don't go out and price yourself in line with watercolor landscape artists, for example, if you know you're doing cartoon caricatures. So that would be the market rate technique. The second technique that I would suggest for a beginner is what I call the hourly rate technique. This involves selecting the hourly rate that you want to be paid for your work and multiplying it by the number of hours that you believe you'll spend on your commissioned artwork. What you get after you multiply those 2 numbers together will be a good base range for what to price your commission at. Now, a couple of things that you want to keep in mind if you're using this method, also things that I talk about in my How to Price Your Art video and also in my masterclass, The Commission Key. When you are selecting your hourly rate, you want to make sure that it is at least the minimum wage where you live, preferably more. I really want you all to be paid a fair and livable wage for your masterpieces. So please, please, please do not select an hourly rate that is less than the minimum wage where you live. Now, if you are a United States resident, then I have a very specific bottom line hourly rate that I think you should be charging. And I talk all about that and the reasons why I feel that way in my video, How to Price Your Art. So definitely check that out. It's linked in the description below. Another thing that I want to remind you all, if you're using this technique, is to make sure you have a good handle of exactly how long it actually takes you to create commissioned art pieces before you do this math equation. If you're drawing with Procreate on an iPad like I do, then you can look at some of your past artwork. You can go on the canvas properties and check tracked time on several different artworks that you've drawn in the past, and that'll give you a decent idea of about how long it usually takes you to create different types of pieces. If you don't have a big backlog of work that you can do this for, then before you put your digital art commissions on sale, I would suggest that you create some sample pieces and then check the canvas properties tracked time feature so that you'll have a pretty decent idea of about how long it's going to take you to create these pieces that you're selling. Another thing to remember is to add additional time on to account for the amount of time that you'll spend communicating with clients and also the amount of time that you'll spend doing revisions to commissioned artwork after you let clients review it. Now, if you have any questions about the revision process or any of the details of what I'm saying, I think the commission key would be a great place for you to look. That's my masterclass. I'm linking it in the description below. And thank you so much for this question, Radu. I appreciate you. Okay, so let's go from a topic that I know a lot about to a topic that I have to admit I do not know enough about yet, but I am committing to learning more about before the end of this year. Brushed by Rose asks, what do you do or use to track your income and expenses for your business? Now, my business that I run is very small and I just got started as a full-time artist in March of this year. So right now I am using an income and expenses tracking template that I just downloaded from Pinterest. It's very simple and it works for me. If anybody's interested in seeing that, leave a comment to this video. I'd be more than happy to send you the link to that. Again, it is very simple, very minimal, and this is definitely an area that I need to learn about. I'm committed to learning more about. Now, the good thing about being a small business owner in the digital art arena who doesn't have a physical product store like an Etsy shop is that my expenses are pretty minimal. Outside of the startup costs that were associated with purchasing my iPad and the gear that I needed to start creating digital art, because I make all of my art and deliver all of my art to clients purely digitally, my costs are pretty minimal. Now, I do have internet costs and learning costs associated with things like being a member on the Skillshare platform. So I do have some expenses, but if you compare them to the expenses of a more traditional business that's operating, say, a brick and mortar store, my expenses are pretty minimal. So right now, the income and expenses tracker, the template that I downloaded from Pinterest, has been working for me. Happy to share that with you all. But again, Brushed by Rose, thank you for sending me this question because it really underscores to me that this is an area that I really need to grow. And speaking of Skillshare, they have tons of different classes on plenty of different topics. One of them being how to manage your expenses as a small business. So I'll be taking classes on that topic. I'll learn more about it and I'll come right back here to this channel to report back, okay? And no, this video is not sponsored, but I love Skillshare, so I threw that out there. Thank you so much, Brushed by Rose, for your question. So Scrunchy Draw says, hi. I just wanted to say that you really inspire me and I'm looking forward to seeing your artwork. How do you color your art? First of all, Scrunchy, thank you so much for saying sweet things. Your support means the entire world to me. And I say this all the time, but all of my creatives who hang out with me on my Instagram platform have really changed my life. So I appreciate you. Okay, I'm going to do my very best to describe how I color my art even though I'm not actually at the coloring stage in this draw with me that you're looking at right now. So for coloring, I use 2 different stages. On the first stage, I'm laying down flat color. That means putting down the base color for things like the character's skin tone, the character's clothing items, and any items that the character might be holding or interacting with in the scene. This also means that base color for any background that's behind the character in the scene. Now, after I put all of the base color on, using the syrup brush, by the way, that's a default brush that already comes loaded into Procreate, I create new layers for both highlights and shadows. Now, in Procreate, for the new layer that I've created for highlights, I set that to a clipping mask to the base color layer, and I set that highlight layer also to the layer mode add. I use a warm color like a yellow or a peach, and I use the 6B pencil, which is another Procreate default brush, and I'll paint my highlights on that layer. I create a different layer again for my shadows. That's also a clipping mask that is clipping down to the flat color layer. For shadows, I set the layer mode to multiply, and I select a cool color like a blue or a purple. I again use Procreate 6B pencil, which is a default brush, and I will paint my shadows on that layer. I know this is a little bit confusing maybe at this point in the video where I am working on line art, but I will share a secret with you that I am not telling many people just yet as of the recording of this video, but I'm newly on Patreon. So if you want to see things like tutorials of how I paint shadows and highlights and flat color, you can join me over on Patreon. I'm Kayla Creative there, and I'll also leave the link to that in the description of this video. That was a big secret. I can't believe I'm sharing it early, but it's just for you, Scrunchy. Thank you so much for sending me a question. Next question is from Kitty Wits. Hey Wits! It's actually a 2-part question. Kitty Wits asks, what's your biggest strength and what's your biggest weakness in art? I actually love these questions. Okay, so my biggest strength in art, I think, is that I am able to catch on to things and learn things in art fairly quickly. I think that the reason why that's actually a strength for me is because I draw every day. I draw something every day. Now, that does not mean that I am completing fully rendered pieces every single day. It doesn't even mean that I'm completing things that will ever see the light of day every single day. But even if it's just sketching an eye, sketching a hand, sketching a face, I always make sure that I spend at least 5 minutes a day drawing something every single day. And I make sure that I focus my drawing in on the specific things that I want to learn next. And so learning new things in art just kind of happens for me over the course of all that practicing. So I'd say that that is a strength in my art process. Now, my biggest weakness in art right now, I would say, is color palettes and color theory. Color theory is absolutely something that I need to work on a little bit more. I've heard of tons of different resources like coolers.co that will help to give you color palettes to start from. Also, Pinterest is a great place to search color palettes, but it's just something that I need to work on, and I just want to get a better feel for which colors are me, which colors match well with my style, and which colors work well in palettes together. I'm definitely working on it, and when I feel like I'm really in a strong space with it, y'all know I'll report back to this channel and I'll tell you all the things that I learned. Thank you so much for this question, Wits. This was fun. Next question is from Art with Mo. This is another double question, and her first question is, can you talk about how to draw folds? Now, I timed this perfectly in my opinion, because right now on the screen you are watching me draw a really comfy and wrinkly and foldy sweatshirt on this cute girl. So hopefully that's helpful for you. I have two quick pieces of advice for you when it comes to drawing folds in clothing. The first piece of advice is to always draw clothing from the top down, being mindful of gravity. So just like everything else on earth, clothing is affected by gravity and is pulled from the top down towards the earth. So as you're drawing clothing, my suggestion would be to start from the top of the character, drawing downwards and making sure that your clothing, your folds, your wrinkles are all sagging downwards or being pulled downwards with the force of gravity. If you make a mistake and you draw folds that are kind of curved upwards, unless you're drawing a fantasy piece or you're drawing a piece that's in a world where there is no gravity at play, or maybe in outer space, then that might look a little disorienting to the eye. So just make sure that you draw creases and folds downwards with the pull of gravity. That's my first tip. My second tip for drawing folds is to use shadows in your work to highlight the actual line art of folds. So as you're watching me draw the sweatshirt, you've probably seen me draw a couple of wrinkles or folds in the material, and in my coloring phase I will go back in, and in these same areas where I've drawn the line art for folds, I will complement these very same areas with shadows using a cool color to infer that there is shadow falling in the garment in the exact area where a fold would be. Again, thinking about fabric, the fold or the indentation would most likely be in shadow, and the pieces of the fabric that are not indented, that are further out, would be in sunlight. Again, I know I'm not coloring on this part of the video, but hopefully that makes sense for you. And I will remind you that I'm very newly on Patreon, and I'm happy to do video tutorials about drawing clothing folds in the future. You can check me out over there, Kayla Creative. Now, the second part of Art with Mo's question is about my perspective. I like to think that my perspective in my art these days is all about happiness, cuteness, youth, curiosity, wonder, whimsy. These are some of the words that come to mind when I think about my art and my perspective in art. That translates in my characters to things like short necks, round faces, big ears. Those are things that to me translate as youthful. Big eyes, to me that translates as a sense of wonder. And then I do things like oversized ears, big hair, oversized eyebrows. To me that translates as whimsical or whimsy. So hopefully those are the ways that my art translates to you as well when you see me pop up on your timeline. Thank you so much for this question. This was really, really fun to think about and answer. And my last question is from Surely Positive Art. This is another compound question. Workflow, favorite brushes, what made you pivot to this career, and puppy facts, how I got my fur baby, etc. This is such a cool question. So first, workflow. I typically start all of my illustration work with reference finding. Pinterest is a wonderful resource for finding references. I am typically looking on Pinterest, just casually searching for references, even when I don't have a drawing in mind. I have tons of different Pinterest boards where I save references to probably nearly on a daily basis, so that anytime I sit down to draw, I'm never at a loss for what reference I can use. I always have a little bank of references saved for me to pick from. After identifying a reference, I will do a rough sketch, and then I really take my time refining that sketch until my line art is very clean. You saw that at the beginning of this video. And then after I've cleaned up and perfected my line art, I go in, do flat colors, and then, like I talked about towards the middle of this video, I add my shadows and highlights and all those kind of details last. Once that's done, that's really my completed illustration. I might go in and change a few things after I've kind of zoomed out and looked at it, if there's anything that I need to change, but that's basically my workflow, starting with a reference, typically from Pinterest, and ending with all my final touches. Now, my favorite brushes are mini. I just recorded an Instagram Reels that went through and demonstrated all of my favorite brushes. So if you happen to follow me over there, look at my Reels section and you'll see a great demonstration of this. But off the top of my head for you, Surely Positive Art, my favorite brushes are Cassave's Everything brush. That's for very smooth line art. For textured line art, I just love Dizzy Terra's oval sketch brush. I do all of my flat color with the syrup brush in Procreate, and then I do a lot of my highlights and shadows with the 6B pencil in Procreate. I hope that's helpful. As far as what made me pivot to this career, it has been an absolute whirlwind. Like I like to share with people, my quarantine hobby turned into the career of my dreams. I bought my iPad in June of 2020, kind of as a last-ditch effort to keep me occupied and to keep my mind sharp during COVID quarantine in summer of 2020. I was trapped in the house. I was so bored. I wanted to learn something new. I stumbled upon videos on YouTube of digital artists making art on their iPad. I didn't even know this was a possibility before June 2020, and after watching a couple nights worth of those videos, I Amazon primed myself my first iPad right to my doorstep, and I downloaded the Procreate app as soon as I took the iPad out of the box. The rest, as they say, is history. And so as soon as I started my art account, started sharing my art, and then started selling digital art commissions, I realized that not only was this the hobby of my dreams, it was also a way that I could make income. At a certain point, I was making enough income and spending enough time creating art that I really had to ask myself, is this something that I could do full time? And the answer to that was yes. Again, I should probably make a longer separate video about the decision to leave my job because it's a little bit more than I can answer here. But I arrived at that decision to leave my career and embark on a full-time art journey. I decided on that in March 2021. So to underscore how much of a whirlwind that was, I'll just repeat. I purchased my iPad in June of 2020, sold my first art commission in September of 2020, and then left my job in March of 2021. I'm simplifying. A whole lot of stuff happened in between that time. I'll make another video to cover that, but I just decided to take a big chance on my big beautiful idea, and here we are, and I could not be happier that I followed that dream. Of course, I'll keep y'all posted on every step of the way, as I usually do on all of my platforms. And about my fur baby, at the time of this recording, Jada is 7 years old. She is a rescue. She's a Chihuahua Bulldog mix. Her formal name is Jada Pinkett. She's named after one of my favorite actresses, and she is just as sweet as can be. An old co-worker of mine at a previous job actually rescued her and brought her to our workplace on her way to take Jada to the pound. It was a last minute stop just to see if anybody at the workplace wanted to take home a puppy. At the time, I wasn't necessarily a huge dog person, but I picked up Jada to be nice when the coworker presented her to me, and Jada crawled up onto my shoulder and licked me on my cheek, and in that moment, I just fell absolutely head over heels in love with her. I can't explain it, but we have been inseparable ever since. I took her home later on that evening, and she has been at my side, my very best friend ever since. I so appreciate you asking me a question about Jada. I love that I was able to end my very first Draw With Me Q&A video on YouTube by talking about my sweet fur baby. So thank you so much, Surely Positive Art, for your question, and thank you so much for all of your support. And that's it. Those are all of the questions that I received for my very first Draw With Me Q&A. So I want to thank everyone who took the time to send me a thoughtful question. I had so much fun answering those for you all. I've actually recorded the full process of me completing this redraw, and that will be available for my Lemonade video tier on my brand new Patreon. Again, I'm Kayla Creative on Patreon, and that's linked in the description, along with all the rest of the resources that I have mentioned throughout this video. If you have made it this far in this video, I want to thank you so much for watching this. Your support means the world to me. Don't forget to create something of your own today. I'm rooting for you. And thumbs up this video, subscribe, turn on notifications. I'd love for you to hang out with me the next time I post something new. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.